Hello, Wayne. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me.
Akmaral, it's absolutely my pleasure.
So, we are going to speak about Africa today. It's for many, many people, it's like very secret, very unknown, but very wanted continent, wanted to see, good for discover, and mystical continent. But you are the specialist in Africa, you are expert, and that's why I wanted to ask you a few questions, if I can.
Please do.
So please tell me, from what your interest to Africa just started?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be speaking on behalf of my business and my customers. I'm the founder of a company called 4G Capital. 4G Capital. And we are a fintech lender. We provide microloans, $50 to $1,000 for a couple of weeks up to a month, just to small African businesses in Kenya and Uganda at the moment, but planning to go further. We also provide business training along with the loan so that that customer can grow their business with the knowledge and with the capital. The business began in 2013. I began working for another African startup, setting up a business in Kenya. My wife and family fell in love with Kenya, so we did a management buyout. So I purchased the business unit from my employers, which was quite daunting, a little bit scary at the time. And we bootstrapped it. I didn't pay myself for a year or so, or we just kept things going and put our life savings into the company. And then in the end of 2015, we got some external investment, and we've been growing ever since then. And now today, we are one of the most trusted brands in East Africa for financial inclusion. We are the industry leaders in impact and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of empowering women, empowering businesses, creating jobs, using technology to drive a development agenda, and it's also a profitable business, and we succeed when our customers succeed. So it's been quite an adventure.
On your opinion, how do you think, what's the perspectives of development in Africa?
It's a changing landscape, and that's for the better. So traditionally, a lot of low-income African countries got a lot of aid from the West and elsewhere, and that was very well intentioned, but it didn't necessarily address the systemic challenges. We see things are changing now today, and for a couple of years, people have been talking about trade, not aid. And certainly the United States has changed its perspective significantly with a view to reducing dependency on welfare, if you like, and changing the conversation to unlock the power of business and trade. And I think that's to be welcomed. There's definitely some discomfort, and things are happening very quickly, but there is a lot of wealth and a lot of opportunity in Africa that can be unlocked to help African countries develop African solutions to their own challenges. And I think that's a very exciting time.
And we know that the population of Africa also is growing significantly. So if there is a big population, at the same time is good for the market,
right?
But in the same time there are some challenges.
Sure.
So what do you think is in this term?
So the context is enormous, and people they haven't woken up to this yet. It's now 2025. In 25 years' time, in 2050, 1/4 of the world's population will be African, 2.5 billion people. Okay, so that's huge. And then 1/3 of the working adult population will be African. So this is gigantic. And there's a lot of negativity and a lot of real challenges about climate change, about mass migration, about people moving because they want to access what they think is a better life elsewhere. But I see it another way. At 4G Capital, we see a demographic dividend. We'd like it to be a democratic dividend as well, but very much a demographic dividend where this explosion of life and talent and opportunity is a real time to unlock the potential and the strength and the resilience of those African economies and really let them flourish within Africa through investment and through use of technology and access to knowledge and the kind of financial inclusion products and services which we deliver. So I think that there's a really important time now for Africa to start defining its own future and taking charge of its own strength as part of an integrated global economy.
But can we say that Western countries, they changed, like you are the great example, they changed their conducting to Africa, because we witnessed expel of France from some African countries. So what happened there, and what you expect in future should be another way of decolonization?
Well, there's no straight path. There's no one size fits all. There's no simple solution. There's no magic wand, okay? Africa is not one country. It's 54 countries.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 5 different regions: North Africa, South Africa, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, 6 regions, global African diaspora, with African talent in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, everywhere. Okay, so this is an incredibly rich, diverse, and complex set of different circumstances. To your point about the French experience in West Africa, I think that that is a very complex situation where there are perceptions and realities, and then there are external challenges which have come in from other northern powers who are contesting for influence in Africa, who are using private security companies perhaps, who don't have much of a mandate for democratic or human rights considerations, and they can offer something that can appear quite attractive to a certain kind of government in Africa. And then at the same time, I think there's definitely big room for improvement in the way the European Union interacts with Africa, and it's very encouraging to see people talking about free trade now. That's a new development. We would love to see more free trade between Africa and the European Union. We'd love to see more investment in Africa on equitable terms. We'd love to see more respect and a more even playing field in terms of the dialogue between the AU and other entities, because there is a huge amount that the North can learn from Africa. And that is neglected. The conversation is always about how much Africa needs the world, and it's this kind of big, challenging area. Let me tell you something. Nobody dies of loneliness in Africa. Nobody. Okay? Every year, millions of old-aged people, pensioners, grandmothers, grandfathers, they die in isolation in their apartments or in old people's homes in the wintertime, unable to pay their fuel bills, having not spoken to their children for years, and they're lonely and they're found, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. That does not happen in the communities I serve. That doesn't happen with my customers or with my teams in Kenya or Uganda. People look after each other. And people don't wake up expecting a handout and expecting the government to come and solve the problems for you. They get up and they work hard, and they love their families and they love their communities, and they profess their faith, and they have a relationship with God and the universe, and they don't apologize for it. And they smile at the challenges that they meet, and they have a level of resilience and courage and humanity and dignity which should be an inspiration to the economies of Europe and the United States and the United Kingdom, where things have gotten a little bit tired and they've run out of energy, and we're expecting the government to solve all our problems. So we could learn an awful lot from Africa, and it's about time we started treating them with some respect.
Can we call it this conduction as like inclusive capitalism, or capitalism with a human face?
It's how it should be. It's how it should be. Capitalism is meant to have a human face. If you look after your customers, they look after you. How revolutionary. It's not that complicated. It's not that complicated. But, you know, I'll tell you a story. During COVID, the whole world had an economic heart attack. And it was really, really tough. And governments locked down because they didn't know what this disease was all about, and it was scary. And, you know, for my customers, if they want to eat, they have to work. And if people want to eat, they have to buy food from my customers. They're buying fruit and vegetables and meat and stuff like that. And we were the only fintech to keep lending to our customers throughout the pandemic. We had their backs. And we got through it, and they repaid us. Our collection rates were better than ever before. And then when we came through in 2021, we had an incredible year, and then that allowed us to raise an incredible investment from a fantastic private equity fund called Lightrock, which is part of LGT, Liechtenstein General Trust, the best investors you could possibly hope. And that has transformed us. And so, you know, by living our values and by, you know, meaning what we say and standing with our customers, we've been blessed, genuinely blessed. And we think we've got an African solution to a global problem. Okay, small businesses around the world need working capital to grow. This is a $10 trillion global opportunity. So that we're not a charity. We're not you know, some cute thing helping poor people. We're helping low-income people become medium-income people. We're helping to democratize wealth creation, because giving that power and agency to individuals for their families and their communities, that's how you fight poverty. That's how you keep communities together. And that's how you counter all these horrible forces of isolationism and extremism and, you know, separation. Because, you know, if you show me an insurgent or a terrorist, okay, I'll show you a young man who needs a girlfriend and a job. Okay, they need a life, they need opportunity. People don't fight when they've got something to lose, or when they're bound together with opportunity and love. And that's what business can do if it's done in the right way. But we need to work with governments. We need governments to help our agenda. We need governments to be pro-business and to, you know, let business solve these problems instead of trying to do it all through these horrible high-tax, high-spend policies, which, you know, they just don't work anymore. They're not sustainable.
Unfortunately, in the countries like African countries, and even in our part of the world, many governments are corrupted. So how to solve this problem in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's not just an African challenge, and it's not just
exactly.
an emerging market, exactly as you said, but I'm just reiterating it. You know, there's corruption everywhere. And I think the way you deal with corruption everywhere is through the bright sunlight of the media, of public attention, of calling it out, and demanding better. Demanding better. We don't pay bribes. We've never done anything like that. We've point blank refused to. We've been very lucky. We haven't been asked, but nonetheless, there are times when people can try to do the easy thing instead of the right thing because they think it's faster and it'll get them there. It just makes things worse. You just refuse to play that game. And if the answer is no access, then I guess it's no access. Okay, we'll go somewhere else. You know, if the opportunity is real, it'll still be there. But if everybody kind of ups their game, then that makes it much harder. And you know, just call these things out. Corruption is a very complex thing.
Yeah.
And it starts with leadership. And so I think that there's a generation of leaders now in Africa and elsewhere where there is a real opportunity to be the change, to be the power of reform, to give people what they deserve and what they expect. Gen Z today, they are very inspiring. They're educated, they're smart, they're hardworking, they're not lazy, they're our future, they're our children, and they're absolutely beautiful, and they deserve better. And you know, there's no pockets and coffins. You know, eventually you have to move on to the next level of existence, and wouldn't it be nice to be remembered as part of the change that made things better?
Yeah, of course, you cannot all the money with you.
Right.
In the coffin, yes, you're right. And as you described Africa as a continent which really deserves better future, and what do you think about UN Security Council, which like now formed from the 5 countries, of course,
Right.
after the Second World War. But do you think will it be changed after like this new order
Yeah.
will be decided or created or established?
So UN reform is a very interesting subject. I'm encouraged that people are now talking about it. You know, it's gone from being sort of sure to a real imperative. I think it would be very good to see the UN Security Council expand its membership. I think that might require some restructuring and some adaptation of the rules. But there needs to be better representation, certainly of the global south, of Latin America, of the African continent, and something that's reflective. Whether it's at the UN level, or it's at the national level or the local level, we need democracy to be more responsive. People are losing faith in institutions because they're seeing that their voices aren't heard, or if they are heard, they're ignored. There's a democratic deficit between what people vote for and what governments do, and this is getting people annoyed. And so if we can start moving in the right direction towards increasing representation, improving dialogue, giving people their voices, and then allowing people to construct solutions, then I think that's a step in the right direction.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
let's hope so.
And the last question?
Sure.
Okay. So, what do you think about BRICS? Because South Africa is founder and member of this group. So, how do you see the participation of Africa first? And the second, how do you see the future of the BRICS? How, in your perspective,
Yep.
what will be with this
Sure.
group or bloc? How called?
Difficult to say. It's difficult to say. We're in a multipolar world now. The G7 and those traditional blocks of countries and economies were united by democratic values. Whether it was Japan or Canada or the European nations or the United States, they were very clear that prosperity was linked to human rights, to freedom of speech, freedom of protest, and all that kind of stuff. And so there was a unifying philosophy as well as economic success. I think the BRICS movement is interesting. I think that they have much different backgrounds and much different agendas. I don't think there's quite the same philosophical linkage as there was in the other groupings. I think that there's kind of room for everyone to play. But I don't think you necessarily have to pick a team. I think if you're Africa, you should be doing what's right for Africa. And that should mean strong relations with the West, strong relations with China, strong relations with India, strong relations with other countries in the global south on terms that work for Africa. So not being exploited, protecting the values and the freedoms which do not come for free, making sure that people are being protected and looked after, allowing business to flourish while protecting customers, protecting freedom of innovation, having progressive tax regimes where business isn't punished, committing to anti-corruption measures, because that way everyone makes more money. And so, my family from Ireland. There's a long history of understanding complexity and prizing liberty and freedom and understanding different models in different parts of the world. And so I think that it's an interesting game to watch. I think it'll be a good game, but I think ultimately we're in a multipolar world. Things are transactional. Africa's got plenty of things to transact, and it should be winning. We should be creating value on our own shores. We should be processing and turning commodities and natural resources into wonderful products that get exported around the world, that everybody loves on free trade or preferential bases that are equitable, where we're going to each other's universities, where people have the access to the best of everything, because that's what my customers deserve, and that's what African countries deserve, and it's what people all around the world deserve. So I'm not too tied up on whether it's a BRICS solution or whether it's another solution. I think that let's just do the right thing.
You know, while listening you, I catch myself on the thought that you know, when I listen, for example, Russian politicians or Russian businessmen, they actually say the same things. You know, very similar. So what I cannot understand why we need always to live in this permanent conflict with the West.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's devastating.
Yeah.
It's so bad for every side.
Yep.
So how do you think, what's the solution is in this case?
Yeah, there are so many different levels to the current situation. I think that going to basics, you know, never hurts. You know, invasions are bad, wars are bad. You know, the destruction and the cost is bad. But at the same time, I think that if we can move to a framework beyond mutual respect, but almost mutual reverence, where we can agree not to try to convert each other to our outlook, and we can respect how other people have a worldview, that might reduce some of the anxiety that generates conflict. But at the end of the day, you know, there's only one person to blame if your house is burgled, and that's the burglar. There's only one person to blame if you're a victim of crime, and that's the criminal. So if you don't want to be a victim of crime, have strong fences, have strong locks, have good neighbors, but also maybe if that criminal has got other opportunities to have another way of existing, then maybe he doesn't have to be a criminal. I hope that makes sense.
Wayne, please explain me. Maybe my question will be too naive,
Doubt it.
but I want to explain to my audience. For example, when you talk just now, you said that it's bad to have a conflict. It is bad to
Sure.
have an invasion, to start an invasion. It is very bad to initiate the wars.
Yep.
But why everybody understands that,
Yeah, yeah.
but why there is this double standards still exist?
Yeah.
Because we know USA as a unipolar
Yeah.
power after the collapse of Soviet Union. They started the wars around the whole world. There are military bases, American military bases around the world. But as soon as Russia tried to demand on its sovereignty, to be heard, to be listened, to be respected, and because of it wasn't, they didn't see, they tried so many times with two Minsk agreements in Ukraine, etc., etc. But this is, you know, the actions of Westerns to Russia,
Yep.
and in comparison to the American invasion
Yep.
to another parts of the world,
Yep.
we can see this hypocrisy. We can
Yeah.
see these double standards. So how can we read it? How can we understand it?
Yep.
Why it happens?
Yep, yep, yep. Well, you know, like I said, I'm a businessman in Africa, so these are big questions. I guess Western people don't want war with Russians. I remember a time after the Cold War when there was a great promise of opportunity, where we welcomed many Russians into the West to do business, to do investment, where many Westerners went to Russia and the former Soviet Union's former countries, and there is huge opportunity there. I think that, you know, you talk about basing and other wars and all the rest of it. There are historical reasons for all of that, and each of those conflicts is very different. American invasion is they didn't invade places and take territory. They invaded Afghanistan after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And by the way, after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the first people to help and to call the United States were the Russians, who said, this is everything we have on Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. And Russia was a very good ally at that time, which I remember very clearly.
Exactly.
And then there was the situation in Iraq. We can talk about that history as much as we like, but America is now out of Iraq. They didn't hold on to it. They didn't steal the oil. They didn't take hold of the territory. And if you speak to the Iraqis today, they are glad that Saddam Hussein is gone. So it's a different situation, okay? It's a different situation. So if you want to make it simple, two wrongs don't make a right. If you want to make it more specific, I would agree that Russia needs to be confident that it is respected and can exist in a world where it is seen for what it is and it's respected, and I would like to see a return to normality. I would like to see a brotherhood and a sisterhood of mankind come back together again. I desperately want this war to end. It is a human tragedy for the Russian people, for the Ukrainian people, and all the rest of it. But, you know, I would like to see that conversation develop, and that means commitment to peace on all sides. And I really hope that that happens. I really do. Because I grew up loving Russian culture. I grew up listening to Tchaikovsky, and my mother would, you know, play all this wonderful music to me, and I desperately want to go and visit, and right now I can't. Or I could, but, you know, it's a tough time, okay? So I think if I do have a message as a human being to other human beings, nobody in the West hates the Russians. Nobody in the West hates the East. We want to see this war end, and let's leave the politicians to do their job and to try to fix it.
Exactly, Wayne, because we, as the Central Asian countries, like as the neighbors to Russia, of course, we are connected.
Yeah.
And also China, our another great neighbor, yes.
Ancient civilization.
And yes, and we want to live in peace, and you're absolutely right.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for
Thank
this
you.
interview.
Yes, spasibo.
And Wayne, let me give us a small gift. It's a Kazakhstani chocolate.
Fantastic. So kind.
Yes, please, from me and my team.
Thank you so much, team. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you.